Today, in this session, we will not silence our cell phones. Turn them on. Our sacred cows. After all, it was just a couple of months ago in Rwanda that a cell phone accurately diagnosed both HIV and syphilis in the field in 15 minutes for pennies. The World Wildlife Fund is now using unmanned drones to catch poachers before the poachers catch their prey. And 3D printers, right, you all know this, 3D printers are now printing organs. Low-cost manufactured prosthetic limbs and human organs, people. We're printing organs and limbs. Anybody think that's what Gutenberg had in mind 500 years ago? Look at this. This is the cover of last month's Chronicle of Philanthropy. Everybody see the headline? Tech Power in the Chronicle of Philanthropy. Now, we'd expect this on the cover of Wired or Fortune or Fast Company, but the Chronicle of Philanthropy, Tech Power, this is going to come as a terrible shock to all of you, but this rag is not exactly required reading in the Silicon Valley just yet, right? But we see Tech Power. Incredible innovations, radical solutions, incredible transparency, and what you're going to learn today is it's not so radical anymore, actually. Today, we have the heart of technology here to share their stories of partnership and hope and triumph. You're going to see some extraordinary things today. If their presentations that you're going to get to hear, that you're going to get to see, and that you're even going to get to touch if you stick around, okay? If these presentations don't arouse questions in you about your own organizations and how you're using technology to accelerate your impact, then check your pulse, okay? Pay attention. These are stories worth listening to. Here's how it's going to work. So we have 3 teams. They're going to spend 10 minutes sharing their stories, talking about their partnership. And this is about partnerships. This isn't just a tech show. This is about the private sector partnering with social entrepreneurs to accelerate impact. So it's not just about the impact, it's about the pain and the torment of forging these partnerships against all odds. So get your question. Did I overstate that?
No, it's quite true, actually.
But the rewards are well worth it. So they're really here to help. We got rid of the chairs so this doesn't resemble a panel. Think of this as a workshop. They're here to help. Each session will go about 10 minutes. You'll have a chance to ask some questions. Then we'll come back at the end. I can tell from looking at the people in this room that there are some people sitting amongst you that have forgotten more about technology than some of us even know, including me. So we'll have a lively discussion. We're going to go the full time, and we'll have some fun. So will you join me in welcoming our very first team, renowned social entrepreneur Dan Viederman from Verite, and his partner from Palantir Technologies, Jason Payne.
Good afternoon. Very appropriate, I think, that we start with a conversation that incorporates both the promise of tech, represented by Jason, and the darker side, which will be described by me. So Verite is a nonprofit organization. We primarily work with multinational corporations in their supply chains to identify and solve human rights and labor rights risk. We work across sectors. Mostly what we do is gather information directly from the most vulnerable people in those supply chains, workers in various forms, and we share that information with the businesses that can, we hope, make their lives better. Work across sectors. Focus on tech today because we have some interesting findings, and Jason will describe how we're trying to manipulate those findings. And also because you're all here, it's a tech session, and you all probably have tech with you that Noah has just asked you to keep turned on. So great, so let's start. Think about your cell phone for a moment. It has a complicated history. I'm not talking about the history of innovation, of the technology. I know absolutely nothing about that. Jason could probably talk a little bit more about that. I'm talking about the sort of human history of this cell phone that is built into it. So it has a geographic path that it has traveled. It is probably finally assembled in China, though not necessarily, but probably. But it has parts in it that come from other places, including the one I want to focus on, which is Malaysia. So why is Malaysia interesting to us? Malaysia is interesting because it's a major producer of cell phone displays. The circuit boards and the processors that happen and do important things inside the cell phones. And it's important because it's the 10th biggest exporter of technology in the world, so it's a major manufacturer. It's also interesting, particularly from the supply chain, the human side, because the workforce in Malaysia is a severely disadvantaged workforce. It is not Malaysians doing the manufacturing of cell phones in Malaysia. It is, in fact, foreign workers. They are from Nepal, they're from Burma, they're from the Philippines, Thailand, they're from poorer countries, and they've come to Malaysia in hopes of making a better life for themselves. They see this job that they can get in a Malaysian factory as something of a lifeline. We've met a number of people as part of doing a multi-year study over the past few years who have, for example, borrowed $1,500 in Nepal, which is twice the GDP of Nepal, to travel to Malaysia. They borrowed that money at 36% annual interest, traveled to Malaysia for a job that allows them to take home somewhere between $50 and $90 a month. They have to choose between sending money home to their families to support their families or paying back the debt. The study that we did was funded by a philanthropist, and it enabled us to do a sort of a long-term study. We interviewed 500 different workers, and we found that in Malaysia, of these 500 foreign workers, a representative sample across all geographies in Malaysia, across all types of production, types of factories, scale of factories, 1/3 of them were technically in a condition of forced labor or modern-day slavery. So at the top tiers of multinational supply chains are workers who are in forced labor making products that many of you probably hold in your hands right now. So how does this happen? These are foreign workers. As I mentioned, they borrow lots of money, they pay lots of money, they're in debt. How do they get to Malaysia to be in this dangerous condition? That's the key, and that's the focus of the work that we're doing with Palantir. They get to Malaysia by having their migration facilitated, we could say, by people we call labor brokers. These might be someone that they met in their home village. It might be a small-scale informal business in Nepal. It might be a guy who says, I can get you a job overseas, it's going to be good for you. Or it could be a formal, licensed, registered institution that facilitates the migration of someone from a poor home country in a poor situation into a situation that they believe will provide benefit to themselves, but ultimately exploits them. These labor brokers take the fees, they lend the money. When workers land in their destination countries, their passports are withheld. They are literally trapped on the job. But these labor brokers are the key. If you think about the supply chain social responsibility conversation and debate, you think about the anti-sweatshop debate. You hear a lot about factories. You hear a lot about farms, the workers who are there. What we're finding is that the conditions a worker will face in a factory, making a cell phone or something else, are baked in by the time they get there. If a worker carries $1,500 of debt at 36% annual interest into a Malaysian factory, he or she will not be able to resist excessive overtime, will not be able to speak up about health and safety violations, will not be able to resist harassment and abuse, be it sexual or physical in nature. So all of the things you hear about and you don't want to see in a factory or on a farm that are sort of the sweatshop abuses emerge from, in this case, recruitment. So we need to come to grips with the problem, which is the presence of these labor brokers. And we've started to do it. We're working particularly in the electronics sector with Apple and HP that have made commitments to be transparent about the labor brokers and their supply chains. We're doing this on a kind of one-to-one basis. But when we're talking about labor migration into the global economy, we're talking about literally tens if not hundreds of thousands of labor brokers. We're talking about millions of workers, and we're talking about the brands whose products you buy. So we're at this intersection. We need to figure out somehow to get out of this one-to-one investigation, working on one company at a time, and figure out how we can scale up what we know into greater impact. I'll turn it over to Jason to talk a little bit more about how we're starting to do that.
So the fundamental problem becomes that it is impossible to be a legitimate, upright broker when competing with illicit brokers. When you're competing with someone who has a briefcase full of cash from exploited workers, how do you compete with that? And the answer is data and transparency. What's interesting is it turns out that no single entity, the hypothesis we're working on is that no single entity alone has the ability to cleanse their supply chains. But collaboratively, competitive organizations can come together to find, identify these illicit brokers and collaboratively remove them from the supply chain and promote those upright brokers that are giving people that are making the sacrifice of spending years away from their loved ones and their families, making that a legitimate industry. And so Palantir as a company is a data analysis company, a big data company, if you will. And we're focusing with Verite on bringing multiple multinational corporations together in a non-competitive way with a trusted agent in the middle to analyze this data coming in from all of these audits, these supply chain hygiene initiatives, et cetera, to find and remove these illicit brokers and cleanse these supply chains. I think the best way to do this is to actually demonstrate the software live to convey how we're going to tackle this. I guess, Dan, anything to add while I'm getting started?
Coming soon. The software.
So this is a notional example here, but if I've got a brand, I can look at the supply chain data that we have on this brand. And this will pull back a network of all of the factories and foundries that are working with, the receiving brokers that they're working with, and then the sending brokers here. With this technology, we can take all of this data and look at it geospatially. So we can see a heat map of where these factories are and where the sending brokers are. In this example, we're keyed in Nepal here. And we can take these and we can look for violations that we've seen or things of concern. So if I look at the risk factors that we've defined with Verite, I have both receiving brokers and sending brokers that have had violations such as fees or clauses in contracts, document retention, et cetera. And so if I've got an individual broker here, I have phone numbers that I can run, I have names, addresses, et cetera. I can see where in the supply chain they're going. This broker works with 4 receiving brokers. Some of these receiving brokers have issues as well. I can see what factories they're heading to. This is obviously notional data and notional example. What's really important here is that as illicit brokers change tack, as they reincorporate, they leave a trail behind. And with this phone number, with this email, with this name, with this address, we can chase those. And with that collective effort of sharing data, we can remove these illicit actors and improve the hygiene of supply chains. And so that's the goal of the partnership and the initiative we're building with Verite.
That's great. So, Dan and Jason, I'm just going to start off with a question right between the eyes. I promised a softball, forget it. Are you friend or foe to the Fortune 1000? I mean, how do you, are you seeking permission, or are you?
This only works if they share their supply chain data with us and they allow us to use the information that we already have. So essentially, there's 3 types of information in the data set that Jason demoed. Information from the companies themselves that they voluntarily, willingly allowed or are eager for us to use. Information that is already public. For example, information about the delicensing of brokers in particular countries, or information about corruption, and Jason's software will allow us to tie a corruption identification from some other data set into the brokerage network that we identify through the company. And then thirdly, direct research. We're going out and trying to gather as much information as we can.
So you have your own investigative function as part of this, yes?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so back to my original question. Are you friend or foe of the Fortune 1000?
I would say friend. I mean, the reality is that it's not in the final assembly plants. It's in the subcontractors of subcontractors. It's in the commodities. It's in the flash memory. It's in the cables for the batteries. It's the batteries themselves. And the reality is that there are a lot of commodity parts that go into these devices. And Dan talks about phones, but let's be honest. It's in any electronic industry. If say there's flash memory, that's in your cloud, it's in your servers, it's in your laptop, it's in your monitor, it's your TV, your car, your airplane that you flew here on, et cetera. So it is a holistic thing. And those Fortune 100 companies, they want to have high quality ethical supply chains. And this isn't a name and shame. This is promoting legitimate brokers and empowering those companies to work with legitimate brokers, which I think is actually very much so in line with the goals of these companies.
It's allowing us to accelerate the process by which the innovations of a handful of companies that are leading get diffused to the rest of the industry and go from the electronic sector to the apparel sector to the construction sector to the agricultural sector. Because these brokers aren't specialized in an industry. Okay. So if we know that because we're working with 1 or 2 electronics companies, these guys are corrupt and traffickers, we want to make sure that they don't get to send workers into apparel factories.
Okay, good. Questions? We'll take a few questions. Yes?
How do you protect the data that you're gathering from getting into competitors' hands, etc.?
That's a Very, very good question. It's almost as if you're a plant to ask that. So,
Almost.
One of the things that differentiates Palantir's technology is a deep commitment to two things. Privacy and civil liberties and auditing to ensure that the data is used correctly. These audits are competitive information, and the organizations that we're talking about in this partnership are cutthroat competitors. What we offer is an immutable audit log such that it's accessible what Dan's team of analysts are doing with the data, ensuring that they're only asking correct and legitimate questions of the data, and also securing that only those with need to know have access to the data. So information on certain facets of it may only be accessible to the companies themselves, other facets of the data they're comfortable sharing with other companies, et cetera. But most importantly, it's the trust of Verite. And so Palantir as a company knew this was an issue that we wanted to look at. We looked at least half a dozen, if not a dozen NGOs, and found that Verite had an incredible reputation, a sterling reputation for very deep audits and very deep success to help as a friend these companies. And so between the technological solution to ensure that Verite is doing things right, plus their reputation, I feel that we feel and we've seen that companies take that. And you want to talk about the data sharing partnership agreement that we have?
So we're signing separate contracts with each of the companies that are willing to share their data with us that certainly place obligations on us. But each of them is also then entirely in control of their ability to share data with others, with us, keep some data private only to the bilateral relationship between Palantir, Verite, and the company, but they can also choose to share it more broadly, including publicly if they want.
Right. Yes, second row.
How did the two of you meet, and what are the terms of your partnership?
Credit to Palantir, they have a number of different partnerships where Jason's function, which is called Philanthropic Engineering, as I recall, allocate and provide their services to a number of different nonprofits. Polaris, Brad Miles is here somewhere, is another one. And actually, Jason and Palantir and some other organizations in the slavery world had already established partnership. And it was sort of through that, I guess, that they realized that there was this chunk of the anti-trafficking, anti-slavery world that was really not being addressed at scale in supply chains, and that's how they came to us. They approached us, and we were very happy when they did.
And the partnership? What are the terms?
It's good. Be more specific. What's the partnership? They have donated their services and time. That's one element of it. They provide tremendous technical resources to us. They give us access to their software. And then we share and develop consensus around the targets in terms of who we want to bring in, the types of information, how we want to talk about it, when we want to talk about it.
So our philanthropic model or social impact model is not cash philanthropy. It's finding entrepreneurial, high-quality, data-driven organizations and donating our technology to help them better meet their mission. And so I think it was actually through, I'll give Brad, the CEO of Polaris, credit for this, introducing us to Dan. Our work in anti-trafficking started with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and Polaris. And as we started to learn about the issue sets, realized that we need to work both from the reactionary hotline and domestic perspective, as well as proactively through financial services, through supply chains, et cetera.
All right, we'll get one more question. Tessa in the front.
Yeah, it's the tool that you have developed, it's designed specifically or adapted specifically for these circumstances, and how this could be replicated in other situations. Like what you described is very likely what happened with timber business, for example. So, curious.
So the way that I like to describe our technology in a nutshell is that we build an operating system for data. And it doesn't matter what the data sources are. We help organizations bring dozens, hundreds of data sources together and analyze it in relational ways, statistical ways, temporal ways, geospatial ways, et cetera. And so it's really agnostic to what the underlying data is. But the way that we look at social impact is what decisions could be made with that technology that would drive social impact. And so we have a very wide portfolio across the spectrum, very many different issues that all revolve around using data to make better decisions and finding organizations that can empower social change through those decisions through data.
Very good. Thank you. I think we We can derive hope from this partnership that transparency is becoming less and less of a choice and more of an inevitable consequence of doing business on this planet. Next up is one of the more enduring partnerships at the intersection of social entrepreneurship and technology. Please join me in welcoming from Amazon, Carlos Souza, and from Google Earth, his partner, Rebecca Moore.
Fantastic. It's very exciting to be here with Carlos. We started our partnership 7 years ago in the Brazilian Amazon, and it's grown into an effective, dedicated force for good in terms of social and environmental change. In fact, I've learned a few words of Portuguese, and Brazilians have the word socioambiental, which means social environmental. It's one word, right? They think you cannot separate it. So we're going to talk about a new technology that actually was invented based upon inspiration by Carlos Souza and Amazon. It's called Google Earth Engine. So many of you have probably seen Google Earth. More than 1 billion people have downloaded it. Using satellite imagery from space, you can see the tremendous changes that have happened on the surface of the planet. This is deforestation of the Amazon going back a couple of decades. I was in Brazil in 2008 leading a workshop and was approached by Carlos Souza. And he said, you know, Rebecca, we love Google Earth, we love Google Maps, but you just let us look at the imagery. You just treat the satellite imagery as a pretty picture. You know, he's a geoscientist. He knows how to extract meaning from those pixels, how to turn it into knowledge, and in fact, particularly to detect deforestation. And he said, Rebecca, we're losing 1 million acres a year of Amazon rainforest. Much of it is illegal. It's happening in remote parts of the forest that are not monitored by law enforcement on the ground. But with satellite data and his scientific methods, you could map and measure where this is happening in near real time and then drive sort of virtual law enforcement. But the problem, he said, is it's a brutal amount of data. It's terabytes or petabytes of data, billions of megabytes of data. And when his institution would try to analyze that data, it could take weeks on a single computer. So he said, you have the data at Google. You have some computers, we hear. Could you let us actually do science and map and measure trends on the surface of the Earth? So that was very inspiring. And so we said yes. So there are a lot of satellites, hardworking satellites, that have tremendous amount of valuable free data that are being collected even as we are sitting here. But that data typically comes off the satellite, and for example, in the case of this fantastic Landsat data, it goes onto tapes in a vault in South Dakota. So the data is like really secure, which is good, but it's hard to get access to it. And this is a fantastic data set that goes back 40 years. So, and it's one that Carlos Souza needed. So we started building this Google Earth engine for global environmental analysis. We call it an engine because it's an analytical engine for the planet. And we brought all that data and many other data feeds that are being collected every day into Google data centers, into this new platform. When you have all this data, you can do amazing things. And when you have the data co-located with all that computing power. So this is a typical satellite image of the Isle of Mull in England, you know, probably not far from here. Clouds. But the Landsat satellite takes 20 images every year of every place on Earth. And clouds move around. So for example, if you sift through those pixels, you can generally produce a cloud-free image of every place on Earth. And that is very important to be able to do that because then the scientists can start to do the analysis. So we built Earth Engine and we started experimenting with it at Google. The first thing we did is we built the first 15-meter global cloud-free image of the entire Earth. And we published that as the new base map for Google Earth and Google Maps 2 years ago. Then we said, well, hey, we have 40 years of data. People need to see what's happening on the planet. You can see glaciers receding, farms being built in the desert, the artificial Palm Islands built off Dubai because they wanted more beachfront for tourism, and deforestation of the Amazon. So we built this thing called time lapse that you can visit earthengine.google.org/timelapse, go anywhere in the world and see 3 decades of planetary change that you can zoom all the way in and browse and so on. Here's Las Vegas, the fastest growing city in the United States over this period. Interesting, while Las Vegas is growing, Lake Mead is shrinking. And that kind of visualization had never been available before. So, what did it take to build time-lapse? Well, it was almost 3 decades of satellite data, more than 2 million Landsat satellite images, almost a petabyte of data. It took 2 million hours of computation in Google data centers to sift through all those pixels and create a cloud-free, select a cloud-free pixel for every spot on Earth for all 29 years and composite that together into this animation. But because we ran it on 66,000 computers in parallel, we had the result in a day and a half on a single computer.
And Carlos, you couldn't do that? No?
On a single computer, yes. So it would have actually taken 300 years to produce time-lapse. All right. So now that we were convinced we'd actually built something useful, Carlos, meanwhile, was building his application. He was moving his deforestation alerting application onto Google Earth Engine. He's going to talk about it. This was the first Earth Engine-powered scientific application, and so again, it's really an honor to be here with Carlos. And again, it's not just about the pixels, it's turning those pixels into information. This is, even as we're sitting here, Earth Engine is getting this data, running his models, doing the analysis, and generating these monthly bulletins that are going right into law enforcement. And again, Carlos is going to talk about that. That has led to the whole project scaling. There's a collaboration now Carlos and I are having with World Resources Institute. It's called Global Forest Watch. You should check that out. What I love is that the IEEE Spectrum said that now, that's Google Earth Engine brings big data to environmental activism. Now, when a tree falls in the forest, it doesn't just make a sound, it sends an alert to activists. So, to wrap it up, we started with deforestation. We're now working with more than 4,000 scientists around the world that are predicting drought, predicting mapping malaria with the goal to eradicate malaria worldwide in 18 years, mapping global water resources to address food security. There's so many wonderful, wonderful applications, but it all started with my friend Carlos Souza of Amazon.
Thanks, Rebecca, for the introduction. It's really been a great honor and pleasure to work with you and your team. When we start this conversation, we had lots of ideas, but they did much, much more than we expected. It's really not a true organization partnership. It's a global movement now that we are creating, that we expect that to grow, to help to control deforestation, to have social control of deforestation, involving other stakeholders. That's where we're working now in Brazil. We are really generating the information very fast, but we want to put the information in the hands of the organization, the hands of the individuals that can actually control deforestation where it's happening. And that's what I'm going to show here, 2 cases to illustrate that. This is the platform, SAT+, that we use every month to detect deforestation. Then we generate reports, do the analysis, send the alerts out. And the most important thing is make the information to reach out to the stakeholders. This is another type of alliance that we are building in this process. And then we have local governments, municipal governments in the Amazon region. We have NGO partners that work with us as well. The media is also paying a lot of attention to the information that we are disseminating. And I have dozens of cases to share. I'm just going to show you two examples. This is the state of Pará, the state I'm from. And these municipalities in green are parts of a strategy that we have developed, and now it's a governmental program, state governmental program called Green Municipality Program. And one of the activities these municipalities have to develop is to verify deforestation at the ground level. Because if you really want to initiate an enforcement process, you need to document what's going on the ground. You just not can get the polygons and send the information to the environmental agents and start this process. So with the help of public prosecutors, environmental agents, we built up a template with information that must be collected on the ground in order to initiate any enforcement case. And we have developed also mobile technology. It's called SADI Mobile. It's a smartphone application that allows this local staff from the municipal environmental agents to walk in deforestation area, confirm this, and document what's going on. So it's really going on well now. This map shows we've been doing this since 2011. We had sent more than 3,000 alerts to these municipalities. In the beginning, the level of response for field verification was low. It's growing now, more recently. All the red markers with the yellow circles are the points on the ground that they went out there and collected the information about the deforestation. And so, as I mentioned, the level of verification is still low, but it's growing. It's 13% of the alerts that were sent out had been verified. They also work as an external validation. They also help us to validate what's going on. Our accuracy assessment for this system is 88%, so it's pretty much what they are telling us, 86% confirmed. 40 municipalities already engaged in this process. And the good thing that municipalities that are pushing this agenda, they are getting out of the blacklist of deforestation, which is an embargo created by the federal government in Brazil that creates a lot of sanctions to the municipalities. So it's really important for them to have this level of control. And such alerts are now being used to create new local embargo areas by the state level. The second case came up recently. Other organizations that we don't have formal agreements with, just our partners, such as Greenpeace, are using this type of information. As soon as we put the information in the web, the deforestation polygons, I have one case here. They use the information, they have an airplane, they fly over this area, they try to see what's going on. In that case, this is a very large deforested area in Roraima State. It's down here, this is the polygon. They confirm that deforestation happened, and they create a campaign, a very, very impacting campaign to alert this problem in Roraima. This big banner says, water shortage begins here. There is some science now, consensus that the loss of forest can create some serious hydrological problems in the whole continent. So this was in the news, came up with a big discussion nationwide. This is the kind of use of information that we expect to happen. Just to summarize what I was asked to, before somebody asked me how is the partnership going, I'm going to sum up here.
Just say it's good.
It's been good. It's been good. But so we started this because scaling was the issue. So we had been asked to, okay, we want to use your system in other countries, in other places. It's really, if you really want to put this at the global scale, we need what Google did. It's really important. Now, I think we're moving towards the social control of deforestation and other environmental issues. So it's important to have this synergy with other users, potential users of the information. If we really want to accelerate impact, we cannot be in our labs generating the deforestation polygons and just look at the statistics. We really have to push this agenda for the use of the information to accelerate impact. So when I say do not create dependency, we were building this software, this platform, and we want other groups to use. I have a very nice case from the Amazon conservation team. They came up to our lab, spent 1 week there. They learned how to use this, and they are using them in Suriname. I saw the maps this week. Liliane Madrigal was showing me. It's really amazing to see what they are doing in Suriname. They are pushing this agenda in other countries. So it's really important to communicate well with the stakeholders. We really tell them what kind of information we expect from them, how we'll use the information they are collecting. And really, this is, in the case of the municipalities, we are measuring their performance to control deforestation. They know beforehand. This is really important for them to know. So this is something that really, it's critical for the beginning of this type of movement, is to have a clear understanding of what you expect from both sides. Thanks for your attention, and we are here to answer some questions.
He always inspires me, but you know, this session is about technology as an accelerator for social impact, but it goes both ways. And as you can see from this partnership and the previous one, social entrepreneurs are inspiring and guiding and accelerating the development of new technology. Technologists want to work on things that matter, right? And it's through these partnerships that we can do that. So
Please. So Carlos and Rebecca, I simply have to ask, building on the point you just made, Carlos, about dependence. Social entrepreneurs have a lot of choices, a lot of technology solutions, a lot of organizations looking to repurpose technology to pursue big challenges facing humanity. In this case, not so many choices. Not a lot of organizations doing what Google is doing. And as watching you tell your story, Carlos, sometimes it's hard to see where Google begins, you know, and Amazon ends, and so on and so forth. Do they have a license in perpetuity to use this technology, or is that a risk that you're assuming?
I will now say officially yes.
All right, you're welcome. That's great.
He knew that already. But anyway.
That's a wonderful gift. Questions for these guys? Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if the person from Google can comment on it, but obviously a lot happens from the sky, and that's a very powerful combination and partnership, and the Palantir guy, a lot happens with the data. But one of the biggest catalysts for social change is pure, raw connectivity, last mile connectivity to rural areas, to other places. Can you comment from, I guess, the Google perspective, and there's nobody from Facebook here who can comment on internet.org, but can you comment on the Google access on how, there is? Get him down here, Noah. Get him in front. Can you comment a little bit?
Don't be a coward now, Evan. Ask the question.
I mean, because perhaps there's nothing from a technology perspective more important than the broader reach of access, rich access. I don't just mean smartphone text access. I mean richer access to these rural areas. Can you guys, either one of you, comment on your investments in those areas, how you're looking to partner with social entrepreneurs?
I can say a little bit about what Google's doing. It's not my area. I'm in the Google Earth and Maps team. We have a whole team called Access, and they are doing a number of initiatives, some of which have been announced, some of which are not public knowledge. But for example, this Titan high-flying airplane for delivering internet, the hot air balloon Loon, which has captured the world's imagination and is actually doing very well in its trials. And you can imagine that there could be really nice collaborations between, for example, the Loon team and my team, because we are working with institutions that are in the heart of the Amazon or on Borneo that do not have internet connectivity and could use it. So just stay tuned for further developments.
Would Facebook like 60 seconds for a rebuttal, or?
Rebuttal?
Not a rebuttal, but a cooperation. But I want to answer your question specifically, but I think it was too generic. Can you be very specific about what you think the challenge is on that last mile when it comes to technology?
We all know what the challenges are. It's pretty dynamic. If not,
when it comes to technology, what are you asking technologists to solve for on that last mile?
I'm not asking you as technologists. I'm asking you as commercial entities. You as technologists are relatively neutral, right? But you benefit more than most others for getting people connected in the commercial sense. Other people benefit, social entrepreneurs benefit when they're already connected for commercial purpose.
Yeah.
So both you and Google benefit and make money off of the data, all good news, right?
Yeah.
And so you want to get people connected.
Yeah.
What we'd like to know is
What we're
social
doing-
entrepreneurs,
what we're
like,
doing.
like
Yeah.
what you're doing, how quickly will it go, and how
Yep.
can we ride on the back of it?
Well, you know, I think there's a whole course that can be given. I know I have 45 seconds because I gave a little bit of time to the man with the question, but there's a whole class that can be given, or a whole conversation around fast change and slow change. And I think what you're looking at in terms of some of the invention and innovation that either or all of us as technologists are doing is around some of the fast change issues, which is figuring out how can we solve connectivity in cheaper, more nimble ways that aren't a draw on the earth, okay? So that's what we're doing. The slow change stuff is stuff like what Internet.org is doing, which is challenging the business paradigms of telcos about how they're going to actually be taking from people who don't have a lot of money and who are in a compromised situation of saying, do I take this solar light, or do I buy kerosene, or do I buy a phone because I really want economic opportunity and I want information through connectivity. And I think that's some of the stuff that you and all of us who are in this social progress, social good sector need to do, is figure out how to take advantage of the rails that we are all kind of putting on the ground and in the air. And the last thing that I would say as an example is, so Raj Panjabi, who did give a talk today, you know, I brought him to Facebook to be a testimony of what is really going on the ground when it comes to social good, because there's so many parts of this, but I wanted people at Facebook to understand what their work could really impact. And immediately the next day, we gave him 20 beacons, and he had delivered healthcare to parts of Liberia that hadn't had healthcare. So we have to be good connectors. We have to build a bridge between all of us who understand what an API is and the world that understands what an SDG is, because the two don't. There's different languages.
Okay, very good. One last quick one, and then we can continue this dialogue at the end. Yes?
So leaving access and tying it back to geomapping, congratulations on your work. It's amazing to see you engaging with the government and communities. I'm wondering, sort of on the backs of Ma Jun's win last night with IPE and his engagement with the private sector, what agri companies, or what case studies do you have on lumber companies that have looked at your data and are really keen to take action from this? How have you seen that engagement?
Yeah, one of the applications we have for this type of thing is to monitor the agribusiness supply chain in the region. We really want to track the source of woods, crops as well, beef in the Amazon region. So we are building now new tools to be able to track this kind of things. There is it's an agreement with the public prosecutors that most agribusiness corporations in Brazil, they cannot buy any products from areas that have active deforestation. So in order to comply with these agreements, we can use this kind of instruments. That's what we're doing now.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So from one of the most enduring partnerships at the intersection of social entrepreneurship and technology to one of the newest partnerships at that intersection, will you please join me in welcoming from Proximity Designs Jim Taylor and his new partner Joe Speicher from Autodesk Foundation.
Thanks. I'm Jim Taylor, the co-founder of Proximity Designs, and about 11 years ago I found myself walking in villages in the country called Myanmar. At that time, the second most isolated country in the world after North Korea. And I was walking in villages. We had just started this new social venture to introduce foot-operated irrigation pumps. And I was walking this village, and I started looking at farmers engaged and looking at this pump. And this was a crude little thing. And they were fascinated by it. And there was a guy in the village who had been using it, and he was thrilled. he was set to double and triple his income. This little crude device was going to have a huge impact in his life. And so that was just thrilling to me. But the other side was this was a crude little metal pump welded together in a shop in the capital of Yangon. And I could see there was just tremendous opportunity to redesign and improve this product. And so I'm not a designer. I'm more trained in economics and business. But we began to form a company that designs and makes and markets these pumps to thousands of villages across Myanmar. Fast forward here to 2011, we've sold over 170,000 of these products. We're in 10,000 villages. We've scaled, we have a whole line of irrigation products now. We've seen the value of simple technology and has massive impact on families. We've engaged in a number of partnerships over the years with different tech-related companies. We've had an 8-year partnership with Stanford's Design School. We've worked with over a half a dozen design firms to develop new technology and new techniques. One of our most recent partnerships is with Autodesk. Now, Autodesk is an unusual company because they're really now devoting a lot of time and attention to impact design. And that's right in our sweet spot as an organization. We're a design company looking at innovations that have impact and can be scaled. And so we began a partnership about a year ago where Autodesk gave us some money. Classic donor partnership. But they gave it to help us with some R&D to design. And what we did with that money is we designed this little thing. Simple object I got through the airport. We think this is the lowest cost irrigation solar pump in the world. It's 10 years ago, we were dealing with crude sheet metal and welding. Now we're looking at molded plastic that's aerodynamically developed with using software. Inside this thing, there's a little impeller, so a bearing, excuse me, that's stainless. It goes around in a year and a half of use about 1 billion times in dirty water. Stainless steel doesn't make it. This is used NASA-grade ceramics to make this bearing. We have an impeller that is, in my pocket, 3D printed. So we're using technology now that we didn't dream about 10 years ago to develop a pump that'll be used by thousands of farmers in Myanmar and to help them boost their incomes and do it now without fossil fuels. So we really see technology as a way that we can apply it to help smallholders. It's not just products, we're also developing services as well. Autodesk is providing some funds to an organization called IDEO.org. Literally just last week, we had a joint team in Yangon going around rural areas looking at how wireless sensors can be used in agriculture. Sensors are now very popular in precision agriculture in Europe, United States, Australia, other markets. How can these high-tech sensors be used to help smallholder farmers? Autodesk supported that research. We've developed the capabilities in a place like Myanmar to really understand our customers and to have design capabilities. So a team from the US, from IDEO, came to Myanmar, worked for a week with a local team, and really uncovered a number of really interesting opportunities of how sensor tech can be used in smallholder agriculture. So this partnership will continue. It hasn't been a perfect partnership. Autodesk has some great software, world-class software. Doesn't work so well in Myanmar. But because we have a guy like Joe who's been on the other side as a social entrepreneur, understands the barriers of how sometimes the latest technology isn't always applicable. So we have a great relationship where we can be honest with each other about the kinds of assistance that help us, the other kinds of assets that they may have that may be less relevant to us. But we have a kind of partnership where we can really have those kind of honest conversations. So all in all, we're really pleased with the partnership we've had. We have a number of different tech partnerships beyond products, services, and systems that we use. So, Joe?
Thanks, Joe. My name's Joe Speicher. I'm the executive director of the Autodesk Foundation, and our tenure on the planet is as long as our partnership with Jim. We just got started less than a year ago, and having known of Proximity, knew right away that we had to work with these guys because of how impactful they are. I don't know if I have to introduce Autodesk after the wonderful intro that you've given to us already, but very quickly, we are a design software firm, so not a software design firm. And what that means is that we create tools for designers to create things in the world. So everything from the shoes on your feet to the phones that you're carrying to this room that we're in to the cars that you drive and the roads that they're on, it's very likely that that's been designed in Autodesk software. And we've not done a great job of telling our story as a brand. We usually push the products. So you may know AutoCAD or Revit or Maya or Inventor. But that's all changing as technology becomes disseminated and more accessible across the planet. But if you think about all of the social challenges that we collectively face in this room, almost all of them are a design challenge. So you think about cities, the future of cities, that's a design challenge. How do we make cities more sustainable? You think about climate, renewable energies, climate change mitigation solutions, that's a design challenge. You think about poverty, agricultural solutions to increase productivity and rise people out of poverty, that's a design challenge. So that's a space that we get to play in, and we're new to the sandbox. As I said, we've been here just a year, but looking for really impactful, valuable partners such as Jim and Proximity Designs, Jim and Debbie at Proximity. This is the future of design. In the future, all architects and all product designers will be taking into account the social and environmental impacts of their design decisions. So it's a really fun, exciting time. And as we're new, we're thinking about our value proposition. And so because Jim has a prop, and because Noah had a prop, we've got a prop. So this is the Raptor prosthetic hand. And this is, I think this perfectly encompasses.
Let's just be clear.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the prototype of this.
Yeah, it's a big deal when a tech company gets on the cover of a philanthropic rag.
Absolutely.
I don't think it's ever. So the story of this prosthetic hand, it's, there's an organization called Enable. Enable was actually born and housed within Autodesk. It's a bunch of our designers who are 3D printing scientists. Came up with this idea with a professor from RIT. And essentially, kids that are born with wrists but without hands, you don't want to invest a whole lot of money in a prosthetic that someone's going to grow out of very quickly. So some designers from our firm began posting solutions like online CAD files. Yeah, pass it around, please. Yeah. It's been around a lot of places, so be careful with the fingers, but it's pretty tough. So within Autodesk, we were able to provide funding, which the traditional grant relationship, but also software. So this is all designed in Autodesk software, as well as our in-house expertise. So a number of Autodesk researchers, engineers, designers have worked on this, and now it's morphed into an open source nonprofit called Enable, where anybody can download the CAD files and print them with either their 3D printer that they've got or one of their neighbors' 3D printers, and they provide that service. So we're really excited to be in this space. We think that there are design solutions for almost all social problems that we're facing as a society, and we're glad to be here and part of the conversation. And really thrilled about our opportunity to work with Jim and Debbie at Proximity Designs. Thank you.
So I just have to ask, Jim, you reside in one of the most isolated regions in the world. How does someone from Myanmar encounter a resource such as this up in Northern California? Everyone in the room is thinking, how do I get partnerships like that? And they're not nearly as isolated as you are. How did this happen?
Well, actually, I knew Joe when he was working at Living Goods. We met at Forum. Maybe we met here at the school. I don't know.
It was my first time.
Okay, we met somewhere, and it's part.
Hey, it was the Skoll effect.
Part of the network, but I think Autodesk in their interest in impact design, and we had a reputation in impact design. actually, I think you sought us out. Yeah.
Well, you had a pre-existing relationship, but we knew that these were the guys.
Yeah, just that it was a good marriage.
Yeah.
All right, very good. Questions? Yes.
Yeah, I'm really jumping off my seat to ask this question.
All right, stand back.
Yeah, I'm like super excited listening to this presentation, and I have a challenge because I work on street harassment and sexual harassment that women face when they move on the streets on a daily basis. I work in India, and I was really saying that is there a way we can design this out of our lives? And this is a challenge, and I'd love to hear more if it's possible, and is there potential here to take this up as a challenge?
Yeah, wow. We're going to solve the problem of harassments in India right now. Let's design our wells. You know, what I'll say is that it's a nascent, and Jim, please step in, but this is a nascent movement, but it's growing, right? Our bias has thus far been applied design, which is the making of things and buildings. But I think that there is huge potential to go beyond things and products and into services, technological capacity, et cetera, et cetera. There's huge potential here. I said before, we're just scratching the surface. We're just getting started. So we're looking forward to implementing these solutions in the coming decades. So,
Explore this if possible.
yeah, absolutely.
Can you have a proposal ready in 10 minutes? Okay, very good. I'm going to ask all the partners to come up to the front. We have about 12 minutes left. I'll invite anybody to continue to fire back questions. If you have stories to tell about your own experiences in forging these such partnerships, over to you all. Let me go back up here to the top. Yes?
I'm assuming we're being filmed.
You are being filmed, but pay no attention to the man with the camera.
No, just wanted to make sure folks could hear me. Hi, my name is Maggie Dupree, and I'm part of a growing community called the League of Intrapreneurs. So actually entrepreneurs on the inside. And woo! I noticed there are a few of you on the panel, and I just wanted to get a sense of if that's what it feels like. And I imagine it's different for different organizations, but how easy is it to sell these partnerships into your larger organizations, and what support do you need from this community to make it even easier?
Can I start?
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's important first to highlight the role of Avina Foundation in this process to put together Amazon and Google. So we haven't been talking much about that, but that seminar that I participated was actually the idea of Avina, which is represented by Juliana here. So they kept saying, oh, you should contact Google and show what you're doing. I'm sure they're going to appreciate the work you're doing. So I see an important role of foundations to make this bridge. It's really not that I had these ideas and intention, but so I think you guys can help. Internally, I think when we start evolving this, and then we had to do paperwork and sharing knowledge, our code. Of course, people get a little bit worried. We are not used to this kind of thing. But it was very smooth process, very clear, very transparent, and we got support.
Good. Thank you. More questions? Did you want to respond, Rebecca?
Yeah, just if I understand your question, you know, how do we, some of us are entrepreneurs, we're sort of leading technology philanthropic chapters or groups within a larger commercial company. And actually I lead a group we call Geo for Good, which is just basically helping to apply Google's mapping tools to make the world a better place and invent new technology like Google Earth Engine when there are gaps. And you know, the way you can help me get to keep supporting that within Google is do great stuff, right? So we work with something like 6,000 nonprofits and 4,000 scientific institutions, and these kind of projects give us case studies that create a halo, and it becomes a virtuous cycle.
I'd like to quote something Rebecca said earlier, which is engineers like to work on things that matter.
Right.
And I assume for the 3 Silicon Valley companies here, probably 90% of the Palantir engineers would transfer to my team if given the chance. And so we have to beat them off with a stick, actually. And so for engineers that don't care about social impact, they go to high-frequency hedge funds. But for everyone else, they come, and this is the most, every single day people pull me aside and say they're so excited about this anti-homelessness project, they're so excited about this environmental project, et cetera. And so, it's frankly, we're just stewards of that entrepreneurship that exists and that desire for social impact collectively across all of our organizations, I think.
All right, let's take another question, comment. Yes?
I'm sitting here spinning a little bit. I love the presentation, love the tech, and I'm wondering if there's a combinatorial play as well, maybe bank shot on a billiard game. But the combinatorial play would be how do we, or what would it look like if we could take the Google Maps with some on-Earth Internet of Things telemetry, with perhaps even some of the labor link or labor voices that Palantir was in supply chain. Why do we have to just stick to deforestation? I think that there's so much more you can do, and I was just wondering if you guys might comment on if there's a combination to all of this.
Yeah, it's a great question. When I was looking at your presentation about the supply chain for human rights issues, and you were bringing up these maps, I was like, oh, we could give you better data. But you understand the space, and we don't understand the space. And so I think there are opportunities to combine forces. And I think that's what Skoll World Forum is known for, right? Making these things happen.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Excellent presentations. My name is Colin Malsham with Dorio Partners. So we work on, one of the key things we work on is leveraging satellite technology to make smallholder farmers richer, particularly in Nigeria. I wanted to see if you can comment on trends that you see in satellite data. One of the key things we try to do is leverage satellite data to effectively de-risk smallholder farmers to unlock capital and finance to them. And one of the challenges that we see is the cost and resolution and frequency of availability of satellite data. And so I wanted to see if you could give a sense on what trends you see with all the new constellations coming up and so on and so forth.
No, it's a great question. Maybe a little wonky for some people here, but let me try to get it at the right level, which is that, even that Landsat imagery that I showed that built time-lapse used to cost $600 a scene. And if you do the math, it would have been more than $1 billion to do time-lapse, but the US government made that data free. I think the trends are that pixels are becoming more and more of a commodity. There are more and more satellites being launched. People are moving beyond pixels into information services. So you would subscribe to, let me know if I should be worried about drought or deforestation, these kind of things. Google acquired the company Skybox, and we want to democratize access to that kind of satellite data. We announced a program called Skybox for Good, where nonprofits can point the constellation at places on the Earth where nefarious things are going on, and then we get that data to them for free and an open public license. So yeah, I think the trends are it's going to get less and less expensive and become more and more about information.
Questions, comments? Yes, third row.
I have a question probably more for the tech companies. I work for a kind of larger donor organization, and we often struggle to engage with cutting-edge tech companies, although we really want to. And I'm wondering, do the best partnerships come about when organizations approach you with a specific problem to solve with a specific technological solution, or do they come about when we approach you with a kind of a request for a strategic partnership? What's a good way to engage?
I have opinions on everything. Anyway, I've been talking too much. Maybe do somebody else want to speak?
I'll make my comments quick. I think that having come from the social sector and and the other side of the table, to be very specific. I mean, you're engaging, and I can speak about corporate philanthropy and technology specifically. That when you're dealing with the private sector, it's very specific. What value can I add right here and now? And let's get clear about what the outputs are. And it's typically, driven by, delineated by time. So is it this quarter, is it this year? The timelines on the philanthropic scale are much different. So being able to translate that with any with any relationship, there is cost, and being able to overcome that transaction cost of engagement. The most helpful way to do so, I think, in terms of engaging the private sector is to be very specific and clear on the outputs.
Yeah, I would also add, do your homework. I agree with everything you said, and I would say do your homework and come to us with, here's a very specific idea that is based upon your knowledge of what we have to offer and how this could be something new that we might be excited about, and you're willing to pull your share of the load. It's not like, I can't tell you how many times people come to me and go, I have this great idea. Would you build it, right? And it's like, you need to, So I think, yeah, practical and near-term focused.
You have time for maybe 2 more questions. I'll start calling on people if there's no more questions. Yes? Second row.
Thank you. So I think just to go with my entrepreneurship friend, that it really is a talent attraction and retention strategy to, so we encourage students when they go for these job interviews to ask them, what kind of things are they doing in this space, and then to give them these cool opportunities to stay there as retention. But I just wanted to build on the last point. And I'm going to ask you to build something. Oh, my God. But is there an opportunity to think about this at scale, which is how do we do matching between very cool projects of these social entrepreneurs and the very cool technology that you have and bring them together that doesn't depend on random one-off kinds of meetings? Is there a technology platform already out there that I don't know about that gives us opportunities to do that kind of matching? You could help me screen so I wouldn't come to you unprepared, that kind of thing.
I haven't seen it yet. You see, I rest my case.
I've personally seen, as someone who graduated 10 years ago this year in computer science, a radical sea change of tech for good, programmers for impact, those sorts of organizations. I think there's an acute, to be critical of the group here, I think there's an acute lack of computer science, talent, software engineering, et cetera. So evaluating quality engineers to build things for these organizations is very difficult to do. I think there's a tremendous value of organizations, such as the 3 represented here, helping start that process and helping start organizations hire people that are data scientists and computer scientists and can address these problems at scale. And I do see that happening. LinkedIn's done some great work to try to get professional volunteerism. You have things like Code for America, which is starting to bootstrap this to get tech entrepreneurs involved with local governments. So I see it happening in real time. I concur with you that there should and could be more. But I think getting more people involved directly with these organizations that have these skills would be a very good first step.
All right, just right in front. Last question in front, and then we'll wrap up.
I think a lot of people who know me as a technological hyper-optimist. Jim Fruchterman from Benetech. But I will want to try to mix in a little bit of leavening, and I think it deals with the issue that was just discussed. There's a giant mismatch between taking someone from Google or Autodesk and trying to hook them up with your random NGO and have them do something actually significant. They don't speak the same language, they don't understand the problems, and frankly, though these companies are representative of ones who seek out philanthropic partnerships, they don't have the capacity to solve all the problems of the nonprofit sector that match up with their needs, unless they can turn it into a product that people can borrow. So this is a big challenge, and I'm also going to mention one of the dark sides about this, because the nonprofit sector gathers data about vulnerable populations. And we in Silicon Valley have built pretty much the best surveillance state you could imagine, en route to really delivering a ton of value to other people. But when you are in a repressive country, there are many nonprofits gathering data about refugees, LGBT people, HIV positive people, and collecting the data in the clear. And the government, even incompetent government now, are vacuum cleaning up all this stuff. So we have to we want to treat other people's data the way we want our own data treated. And I think this is going to be a big concern in the nonprofit sector. We're going to have a Home Depot or Giant Breach, and it's not going to be donor credit cards. It's going to be a list of all the gay people in Kampala or something horrible like that that's not going to go well. So I think we just have to keep this in mind and use the technology ethically, which I think the nonprofit sector is very good at. And this is from someone who really believes that technology is going to dramatically improve the social sector and our ability to deliver results. But we just have to keep the power of the technology in mind and engage with the corporates and look at great models like the ones that we've had, because really, under the hood, all these companies would love to work on this. All these people would love to work on these things. And the nonprofit sector is 5 to 10 years behind the times in the use of this technology. So there's so much more to do, but it's hard. And the money doesn't work as well as it could. But I think the tech sector wants to see it happen. And with your expertise in social good, I think there's these great partnerships that can really be built from the deep knowledge of both groups to use information for making a better society and a better world.
Thank you, Jim. So we're out of time. Thank you for your comments, your participations, your questions. It seems only fitting that I'll borrow the immortal words of Steve Jobs, who said, and I quote, "Technology is nothing. That what's important is faith in people, that people are basically good and smart, and when you put in their hands great tools, that they will do wonderful things." And I just want to thank all of our speakers and the partnerships for making vivid those words being right. Thank you.